Now our next vocabulary word is the commutative property that we find in algebra, arithmetic, and it's basically something like this. A plus B equals B plus A. And you might say, well, that's obvious. Well, here it is in the property form. A plus B equals B plus A. So this would be the commutative property of addition. Where we're adding. This also applies to multiplication. So this would be multiply here. So again, in the commutative property, this tells us we are allowed to do it. Take a part of an addition, add it to something, or the other part, it's going to be the same. Multiply A times B, or B times A. The commutative property of addition, commutative property of multiplication. All right, another vocabulary word, the associative property. Well, here we have the letters A plus B plus C equals A plus B plus C. And you might say those are exactly the same. Now, if I put parentheses around these two terms, then what we are supposed to do is add these two terms first and then add it to the C. And in the associative property, they're saying we could also add B and C together first and then add it to the A. Now, most people do this commonly without thinking about it. This is the rule that says you are allowed to do it, and it gives you a true statement. So this is the associative property of addition. Now if we have the same letters, let me put the B there. So A times B times C, these are the same. But if we do these two first, that is multiply A times B, and then multiply it by C, or if we multiply B times C first, then multiply it by A, this is an illustration of the associative property of multiplication. And they're saying you can do it that way. So even though they're in a particular order, by grouping them differently, you're associating them differently, you are allowed to do it. It's true and the proper way to do it in mathematics. Now in the distributive property, it starts off looking like this. And here we take the A and multiply it by B, and we get AB. We take the A and multiply it by C, and we get AC. This is the distributive property. Now, something I mentioned in another presentation was if you want to isolate the A, you do it by, to get back to that, by the process of factoring. So we factor out the letter A when it's in two terms, sort of the reverse of the distributive property. And if this were a negative, it would be the same. So when we have a parenthesis and we take the term that's outside of the parenthesis and integrate it into the process of distributing through multiplication, we end up with this. And then the reverse of it, which we'll use in chapter 2, is called factoring. Distribution, factoring. Next we'll do the identity property, and that is if you take the letter A, which could stand for any number, and you add a 0 to it, this just equals A. So adding a 0 to any number does not change its value. So this is called the identity property of addition. And if you take any number and you multiply it by a 1, it stays the same value. And this is called the identity property of multiplication. So the identity property of addition, adding 0 to any number, the number doesn't change its value. Identity property of multiplication, multiplying any number by 1, it still stays the same number, the same value.